Mikey P back on the Money Players podcast in the Money Media YouTube channel. Churchill opening day, and this is Saturday, April 25th. Who better to bring in than a guy I know loves Churchill, is going to be at the Derby, and his opinion when it comes to Kentucky racing is one I infinitely trust. Jackson Muniz in the house. What's up, Jackson?
What's up, man? I can't speak for everyone, but I'm one that's certainly glad to see Keeneland ending and Churchill Downs starting, because I typically do a lot better at Churchill than I do at Keeneland. So this meet's we had the good little score opening weekend, and since then it's been a bit of a struggle, but it's really difficult racing at Keeneland. So I'm excited for Churchill to start.
I am too. I love Churchill. And of course, we get these player-friendly wagers. These turf pick threes pop up, the $3 late pick threes pop up. We got Derby week coming with all these options, and Jackson, we're headed to Kentucky, to Louisville here next week.
Yeah, I'm landing about exactly 1 week from right now, so that's kind of cool, and a little under the weather this week, and glad I'm getting it out of the way and be 100% by the time we get to Kentucky next week.
Well, the KTDF has been very generous with us, sponsoring tons of content on the network, and no exception for this podcast. So we appreciate their sponsorship and Kentucky Racing, Jackson. It's right now, I would say it's probably, you could argue that it's the number one racing circuit in the country.
I think it is, especially if you're talking about the year-round product. I mean, even Ellis Park, which for most of my life has kind of been neglected. You look at the cards they even have during the middle of summer with Saratoga and Del Mar going on. Those cards are pretty good too. So year-round, it does feel like Kentucky has the best product as of right now.
Absolutely. Churchill, Keeneland, Turfway, Ellis, Kentucky Downs, just so much top-notch racing. You got full fields, you got huge purses. Tough to deny this Kentucky racing. Well, we're going to jump into Churchill here for Saturday, opening day, and it's an early card. They were running those twilight cards there on opening day at one time, but this one starts at 12:45, Jackson, and maybe we'll give a spot play and then look at that $3 late pick three. I was going to look, I'm going to look at one of the races earlier, but you like race number 3. You said you want to talk about that one a little bit. It's a 30 claimer. They're going a mile. Who you like?
Yeah, not my strongest opinion ever, but it is one of these races. It's a bit of a smaller field, and it feels like the favorite is just okay. She's coming off of a win and an off a turf affair against turf horses on the dirt, and I think that race is probably a little bit better than it actually was. And I expect Lady Orient to be over bet. Talking about number 3, Lady Orient at 6-5 on the morning line. I'm going to try St. Nancy S as the lone speed in this race. And I know her dirt races, for the most part, haven't been great, but she does have the one good race on debut last April at Oaklawn Park to run back to. And her last couple races, although they were on synthetic and the grass, seemed to be a bit of a wake-up call. Maybe she's running back into form. And it really seems like she's going to have a massive pace advantage in here. I mean, she might have a 4-length lead down the backstretch. So if she's able to get loose, get comfortable in the front end, I think that she could be pretty difficult to catch. And it seems like she's going to be the right kind of price in there.
Yeah, back to one turn there. And you mentioned it's a little bit of a pace edge. So we'll see what happens with that one. 9-2 morning line. So Jackson always gives you prices. That's race number 3 at Churchill on Saturday. I was going to go to race number 5 for my spot play. Now, this is a starter race here, and it's $30,000 starters. They're going 6.5. And I want Jackson's opinions on this horse because it's the 3 exploration, 3-1 morning line. This one was claimed by Rick Dutrow out of a race on February 15th in New York. And that was a prime time for that inside bias in New York. This one was wide on that occasion. And I do think the distance suits. I like the Dutrow claim. I know it's claimed off of Linda, but I think this horse was against the racetrack last time. That figure fits here. It's just a horse. I'm not sure what kind of price you're going to get. I could see 5-2-ish because there's others in here that are going to take money, like the 1 and the 2. So what's your thoughts on the 3 exploration race number 5?
Yeah, I think he definitely deserves a look in there. I think the one hesitation I had was that day specifically, February 15th, is kind of when the bias started to go away a little bit. It was still there, but it wasn't quite as strong as it was earlier in February. Like on February 5th where this horse ran, that was when the bias was at its peak and he was on the rail that day. So don't want to talk you off that pick because it does seem like it's kind of up in the air as far as that rail bias goes. But this horse is supposed to get a setup with the 1 having a lot of speed. The 4 has speed. I think the 6 has a little bit of speed on the outside as well. So definitely a horse to look for from off the pace.
Let's jump to that late pick three, $3 late pick three for Saturday at Churchill. And it starts on a 2-life claimer at Jackson. They're going 6 furlongs. And we were talking off air, and you said you either had to single or spread. I think you're going to single.
Yeah, I really struggled with this race. I'm not just going to be honest here. And it is one of those races where they all kind of look exactly the same to me. They all kind of went the exact same trip. They've all kind of been around the same figures. And when I have a race like that, it feels like one where you're supposed to either take a stand and hope to get lucky, or you're supposed to spread really deep, especially when you're talking about the $3 pick three and the higher minimum. I much prefer to take a stand. So I'm going to take a little stab here with the number 2 Guardian for Eric Foster, Irad Ortiz. Barn's going well. Irad is Irad. There's a lot to like here. And I think this horse, when you look at his dirt races, and specifically the one that happened at Keeneland, just feels like a field that was much tougher than the one he's going to face here at Churchill Downs. It's very slightly drop in class, but the Keeneland field's probably a little bit stronger. That was going 7 furlongs. He got the best of the other speed that day and just got a little tired late. And I think what makes Irad so good on horses like this is he's so good at getting speed horses to relax if they need to. He can just take them and sit in the pocket at Churchill. And I think that's something I'm going to keep an eye on a lot at Churchill Downs as well. Most dirt tracks, I feel like you probably want to be more in the clear and out wide, but Churchill Downs year after year seems like being inside is not the worst place to be. And maybe it's even the better prime spot. So with this horse being drawn inside, has enough speed to make the front if they need to, but if not, he can sit the pocket and work out a trip from there. So I'm going to take my stand right here, but I mean, you can talk about a lot of horses in this race.
Yeah, and I'm going to talk about a few. My topic was the 10, who I liked in there, and that is Where You At. I like the name, the typical Pittsburgh guy here. This one's speedy. I like the dirt race on February 1st at Fairgrounds. And they tried the grass, went to the front, and faded there in that spot. It was 17-1 there, though. So now back to the dirt. I like that win-2 back, and I do think that this horse, could play in a race. That there's just a lot of different options in here. There's others, though. I didn't mind your 2. That one would be on my tickets. I think that the 7 Army Wildcatter is another one I could use. Now, this horse has Delta form, but it's John Innes, and he's around. His barn is doing pretty well in Kentucky right now. This horse is closing at Delta at big prices. I do think that has shown speed also in the past, so a little bit versatile, has only 4 starts and has been in the money 3 of them. So I think that this is a likely spot for this one, maybe at a little bit of a price. And then even the 5, Mr. Sensei, 12-1 morning line, decent allowance try at Indy, and that was not that long ago. It was only on April the 8th, and that was a nice comeback there. It was protected, now back to a claimer. That was this horse's best race in quite a while. Now, gets into a spot where this is probably the right level for this horse. I'm looking for prices, so I'm going to try the 10. I'll use the 7, 5, and then a little 2 there to kick off that late pick 3 on Saturday at Churchill. Go to the stakes now, and race number 9, it's the Rocks Elena, 200,000, and it's older fillies going 6 furlongs. Jackson, this is a tricky race too. One Magic Filly, 5-2 in the program. She was second one time over this racetrack, lost in November to Shred Dinar, who's a really nice horse. I mean, there's no doubt about that. Gets blinkers here. She's speedy. She has a little bit of class to her. Does she win?
I'm going to take a shot against her in here. And I think you have to decide, did she just hate Gulfstream Park or is she going off form? Because both of her races at Gulfstream were pretty poor, I thought, especially the race and the Rampart back in December. I mean, she got a really good trip in there and came up completely empty as a favorite in that race. She didn't hit the board. So, and then came back in the inside info and was arguably even worse. So maybe she just hated it down in Florida because her races in Kentucky were much better than that. But now the blinkers are going on. To me, it kind of seems like they're just hoping to wake her up a little bit. And I'm going to take her on at a short price. I'm also going to try to beat Zylos, who I would expect would take some money in here just because she's the bigger name. Everyone knows her. She's run the Brewers Cup a couple times, and she's another one. I just think you look at her recent form, she just isn't that fast anymore, and you're supposed to try to take her on. So I'm going to try a couple prices in this race, try to get home with some long shots, and I'll just go in numerical order. I think Minx Palace is one that deserves a long look in this race, and I was waiting to bet her. I believe it was in November in the race she finished 5th, and there was a whole lot of speed that day. She was supposed to get this great setup. Then everyone scratched, and all of a sudden she was the only closer. Or no, she was the only horse she was in a field with one speed and with a bunch of closers. She had no chance that day. And then she came back at Turfway and ran really well when she did get the right kind of setup. And I think she might get the right kind of setup today. One Magic Filly is going to go forward. Jersey Pearl is going to go forward. Lots and lots of Candy is going to go forward. Even Lucille Ball and the horse to the outside, Esternia. All these horses want to be forwardly placed. And I think the 3 might be the right closer. That's Ming's Palace. She's got some numbers that fit. She's going to get a setup. I want to use her on top as I'm going to use her in the pick 3, but I'm also probably going to bet her to win because I just think she's a horse that's trending the right direction and is going to get the right kind of trip. And then the other horse I will use Esternia drawn on the outside, another price in here. I know last time she didn't run that great, but she tried to take it to Holland Ice, who's in really good form right now. I mean, she just didn't break great, rushed up, dueled with that one, and just kind of faded late. And maybe you want to be a little forgiving of that race, especially if she's going to be the right kind of price. And you don't have to go back too far to find a winning effort from her. The race 2 back was a race that would probably be good enough to win this race on Saturday. She drew outside of all the other speed. I think she could get a really good trip from out there, and she's another one that's going to be the right price. So two 10-1 shots in the morning line, and we're going to try to get home with just those 2.
So the 6 Zeitlos was in that same race against Holland Ice and ended up beating a little bit, sub 4-1 in there. It was beaten less than 6. And Evanescence came back to romp yesterday here. This one has some class. She has 4 wins over the racetrack. Now, she is 6 years old, so but may have needed that race last time. And I just think that maybe that she could get the right trip in here also. She's a horse that if she gets back to her class, back to herself, I think that she could be a use. And I'm going to try lots and lots of Candy. I like the couple wins, one in November, one in January, the speed, the figures. Now, I know one of them was off the turf, but I just think that this horse, again, likes this track. 2 wins and 3 starts and a second place finish. And she might, I know that there's speed in here, but she could be the speed of the speed in this spot. And, there was no way she was beating Shining Star on the grass on February 17th. So I can pitch that race. So it's encouraging that she's in this race. She's working up a storm. She's going to go. Can they catch her? And then you get Brian on the front. Well, if he can get her to relax, I do think that she's going to be very dangerous in this stretch here. So I like the 4. I like the 6. I understand your horses, though, too. I do think that this race could set up for a price. And it's going to be very trip related to decide who gets it done.
Yeah, that's one of the more wide open races you're going to see on Saturday. It's a good betting race.
Race 10 to finish this $3 late victory on opening day at Churchill. And it's a 1X on the grass, a mount and 8th. And Jackson, this race you have without returning off a troubled trip at Keeneland. This one's 8-5 morning line. I do think that he's the most likeliest winner, but what say you?
Yeah, I'm going to try to beat him in this spot too. I thought the trouble was a little overrated. I thought he probably had his chances if he was good enough. And I will say I don't think he's going to be as far back as he was at Keeneland, because you look at his races down at Gulfstream, he was much closer, which will probably serve him quite well in this spot. But I think just watching that race back from Keeneland, if you watch him and you watch Fort Thomas, who comes out of the same race, I mean, Fort Thomas had a way tougher trip than Without did. Fort Thomas had a move. They were basically in the same spot coming around the turn. And Fort Thomas made his move with like 3 furlongs to go. He had to go 5, 6, 7 wide around the final turn and still beat Without to the wire. And I thought the horse ran really well in that spot. First start of the year. And if he moves forward off the bench, that was his first start since November. So if he moves forward, he can be really dangerous. Tough pill to swallow, the 1 for 21 and a lot of minor awards, but we're talking about a horse that's going to be 8-1. So I'm willing to overlook that. And, I just talked about briefly with the pace, there's really not a whole lot of it. And I think the other horse I would use in that situation is Ashley's Archer, who is cross-entered down at Gulfstream Park on Saturday. So we'll see if this horse ends up running. But I think if you look at his one comeback race down at Gulfstream on Florida Derby Day undercard, this was a horse that wants to be fourthly placed. He broke well out of the gate and probably wasn't Javier's best ride. This horse just wanted to go, was super ranked, just check in the first half of the race and kind of took out all of his late punch because he had nothing left in the final furlong. But I think today he can maybe control this pace. All of his turf races are pretty good. You have to kind of go back pretty far to his 2-year-old season to find his other turf races, but he ran really well, winning both of those spots. He was DQ'd in a stake, but we'll be willing to overlook that. So yeah, I'm thinking try to get by with a 2 on the lead and the 6 horse from off the pace in this race.
Yeah, and I understand the 2, but was really ranked last time. And then of course, whenever they fight like that, they're not going to have a lot of punch late. So I don't really hold that against him. I'd imagine that the plan is going to be to make sure that this one doesn't get in trouble whatsoever in this race, because watching that last race was pretty brutal. My thing about without is I do, I understand what you're saying here. And I just think that the horse didn't get a very good ride in that race. Was way too far back early. And then when he finally was able to go, he was making up ground. And then he kind of had to stop. He just at a little bit of a key time. I don't think he was winning by any means. He was not catching the top two in that race. But I do think that he was beat less than a length in a race that really he got the drop down in distance. I do think maybe that would be better for him. Now you get Irad. You're going to have to take a short price of this horse. And I'm not crazy about that. But I do think that he has maybe a little bit of a class edge over many of these who just struggle to win. I mean, if you look, this is sort of like a 2-life kind of spot. And a lot of these have had plenty of chances. So we'll see what happens. I don't really like to take short prices, but I do like this horse a little in this race. And then I'll use Fort Thomas coming out of the same race. And you're right, the horse raced very well in there. It's 27-1. It's not going to be anywhere close to that in this spot. And you say 8-1 morning line. I don't know. I could see it being lower, especially if the 2 scratches out of here. I do think the 6 will end up the second choice in this race. Now, but he'll play better in pick 3s, especially with that $3 minimum, Jackson. Okay, so I really didn't prep you for this, but I mean, they've announced a couple new wagers over the track for this Churchill Spring Meet. You got the odd even bet. I know nothing you're probably interested in. You have some matchups with some high takeouts, and then you got the jackpot 8. So does any of those things interest you?
Probably not for me, but if anyone's interested in them, I'd encourage you to check it out and read up on the takeout and everything and decide for yourself. You never know. Maybe you'll see a matchup that you really, really like, and maybe those ones will be worth jumping in. But I think for me, it's probably going to be it'd have to be a really good opportunity to try to play one of those.
Mm-hmm. Well, at least they're trying new things, and typical horse racing Twitter. When they do try new things, everybody tends to attack and take and just if you're not interested in these things, just don't bet them. I mean that's sort of my opinion on it. And yes, we don't. There's plenty of bad bets out there. I mean, there's people playing the lottery 7 days a week. I mean, so it's they are trying new things, and that's we just can inform. That's all we can do.
Yep, no doubt.
Any Derby thoughts before we go?
Oh,
I know it's early.
I'm excited. I don't know. It feels. I was talking about it with Ryan the other day, and I think I'd be surprised if it's a long shot. Like it feels like a pretty top heavy race. Mm-hmm. Not just the top 3, but even like the secondary contenders. When you get towards the Chief Wallabies, the Pumas, the So Happies, it feels like it's going to be someone in that top 6 category. But of those 6, like I don't know. I mean, it's pretty wide open. I'm curious to see if the draw changes anything, because there's really not a whole lot of speed. Mm-hmm. We still don't know if Chip Honcho's going to run. He'd greatly impact this race.
Yes.
No matter what. So there's still some dominoes to fall to decide, but it's getting close. I'm ready.
Yeah, a big weekend coming. You have, of course, lots of contests to jump into. The Oaks Day Challenge. You have the Derby, of course, KTDF. We're locked and loaded for that. That's going to be fun. And I can't get out of here without mentioning your NHC seat win over the weekend at Laurel. So congrats on that. Another stellar performance in a contest from you. Yeah,
thank you. It was a lot of fun, and it's nice to get that out of the way in April and not have to worry about it for the next 11 months. So got a fun trip to look forward to next year.
Well, don't sleep on Jackson. He's going to be with us all weekend, and for the Derby. So you can see a lot of Mikey P. You can see a lot of Jackson. See a lot of Ryan. Sure, we'll see some PTF. We'll keep you updated on the network. Hopefully, we can give you some winners. Enjoy Churchill's opening day. We'll see you all next time.